Hey, good morning, Gary. Good morning, John. Good to see you this morning. Jamie, how are you? Welcome. Welcome, Vicky. Good to see you. Good morning, Bob. Hope things are well. Hello, Brother Jeremy. Kristen, good to see you this morning. Pray you are well. Maggie, hello to the Pereira household. Good to see people rolling in. Good morning, good morning. Morning, John. Great to see you. Brother Guinan, good to see you, my friend. Hope you are all right. Good morning, Yvette. Thank you for all your work. Continue. If everybody doesn't know in the chat, Yvette is our administrator at church, and she's been doing a great job being a one-arm paper hanger in these days of difficulty. So thanks, Yvette. All of our staff have. Henry and Bonnie, everybody is, as Judy, everybody's pulling on the rope. Thank you. Morning, Linda. Good morning. Good morning, good morning. It is a beautiful day. That's exactly right. It is. Get some fresh air. Let the sunshine do its work, for sure. Good. That is good medicine right there, Cecile. Thank you. Good morning, good morning. Morning, Vicky. All right. Good morning. It is Monday, the 6th day of April, and it is the first day of Holy Week, of this journey from Palm Sunday and to crucifixion and resurrection. Good morning, Irene. Great to see you coming in. So we are on this journey. So each day we're going to see what Jesus is up to. We're going to follow the story of Jesus this week, and we're going to see what that has to offer us in this journey. And so, but before we get started, I wanted to just note that that yesterday in our worship we prayed for David Costas, and he's been afflicted with the COVID-19, and he passed into the next life yesterday. And so I want you to as we might hold together and walk together in these days, that you might hold together those who love him and who cared for him, and hold together his family. He's a husband and a father, and hold them dear in your prayers, that we might not be alone in those who love him may not be alone in his grief, their grief for them and for their loss, and that our world is a lesser place because he is not in it. So as that the things we face right now are real, and they are challenging, and they are substantial. And so please hold up. He is Gary's friend, and so please hold him and his family in our prayers. With that, let's see what Jesus was up to this morning. That last night, or yesterday, if you remember, it was Palm Sunday, that we had Jesus, the triumphal entry through the Sheep's Gate of Jerusalem. Now, why the Sheep's Gate, and why the palms on the ground, and all that sort of stuff? Jesus is having his way paved for him. Why? Because thousands of sheep and lambs had just been driven into the city as the sacrifice, the ritual sacrifice for that week that would happen on Thursday at Passover. And so that all the lambs were driven through the Sheep's Gate. It was the place where the perfect sacrifice would enter the city. Jesus didn't just happen to pick the Sheep's Gate. The Sheep's Gate is an enactment of the perfect sacrifice of Christ that would come in through that gate. And so he walks in through, and he spends some time surveying the temple. He'd been to the temple many times. There's many people who believe he'd spent a good part of his life at the temple. We're not really sure, but what we do know is he surveys the temple, and then that evening he leaves and goes to Bethany. Now, who lives in Bethany, and why Bethany? because Bethany is Jesus's hangout. It is the home of Mary and Martha, and if you remember, Lazarus, his friend, that he cried over. Mary and Martha and Lazarus it is home base for him when he is in Jerusalem. Now, Bethany's a couple miles outside of Jerusalem. So he leaves Jerusalem, heads back, and has this sense of hospitality. I always love this image of Bethany. One of our jobs, I could simply talk about this, that one of our jobs in the world is to simply be Bethany for Jesus whenever Jesus shows up, is that we might be the place to encourage, to bring our hurts, to get new life and new resurrection, that we might dwell with him and celebrate with him. And, Len Sweet is always fond of saying that Jesus loved Martha's cooking, which I always love as an image, that Martha spent all of her time in the kitchen because Jesus was a foodie. He loved her cooking. There's all these beautiful little elements that are a part of this. So he comes in on that evening, comes down to, in the morning, sets out again for Jerusalem. He's going back to the temple. Now, he's going back to the temple with a purpose. And we get a foreshadowing of this purpose when he's on his way. Now remember, it's a couple miles, so it's not a long walk. And he's walking into Jerusalem, and there's this fig tree on the way. Now he has just seen the whole layout of what the temple operation has become, and it clearly has afflicted him. As he walked around, he said, no two stones are going to stand on each other when this is done. Like this is going to be an ugly scene. And he's standing there, and he's on his way in, and there's this fig tree, and there's this fig tree that isn't blossoming, that isn't blooming, has no fruit on it, and he curses it. It's one of the few times in Scripture you see Jesus actually kill something or do something that's offensive, and he curses the tree withers and fades. And many will think this is a symbol, but it's really foreshadowing for what's, Jesus is great at foreshadowing. We think, if you pay attention to the story, he will have told you what's coming up in the next phase, because he's telling you ahead of time. And he's got this moment in which the fig tree withers. If it's not bearing fruit, it's not worth giving energy to in this world. If it's not bearing fruit, it's not worth giving energy to this world. I think that's an incredible lesson for us in this time, where all these things of us have been stripped away, except for maybe Tiger King, which should be stripped away. That are all the other things that we're a part of. That all our meetings, all our engagements. I mean, we're still in. Some of us are still engaged in work in different ways and all these things. But so many things have been stripped down. And we're recognizing how much fruit they didn't give us in life. How much they were just suck holes of our time and energy and talent. And that this fig tree is a symbol of that. But that's not the end of the story. That's just, again, the foreshadowing. Jesus drives his way into the temple. And this is where, my only thing when you say, what would Jesus do? It's my only kind of response that I actually like, because I don't think we're supposed to do what Jesus does. I think we're supposed to do what we do, what we're called to do in our age and our time. That we're not called to be Jesus, we're called to be us. And so, but that's another story for another time. But when Jesus goes into the temple, marches past the temple guards, and starts to flip tables and gets out the bullwhip. He just starts to destroy the temple complex as he finds it. And so when somebody asks you, what would Jesus do? Understand that flipping tables and getting a bullwhip out to your enemy may be a legitimate, I'm just saying it's scripturally valid. Now, I'm not advocating that, obviously, but what I am saying is that this notion that Jesus was this warm, fuzzy bunny kind of character he's not at all. Because part of what we have to understand is what's happening. Remember, I talked about the lambs that were driven into the city. Now the lambs come in, and the high priests are looking over the lambs, and they find the perfect lamb. And Caiaphas, the high priestess, carries the lamb in over his shoulder as the perfect lamb, and all of the other lambs follow behind. Thousands of lambs, because it used to be in the olden days you would raise that lamb on your own farm and then you would bring it to sacrifice. But the temple over time had consolidated this work. They consolidated it all together and they said, okay, here's what's going to happen. You all are going to pay us for the lambs, and you live with the lamb for a while, but you're going to pay us for the lamb. And you pay us. This is where it gets kind of like Federal Reserve-y, is that you pay us in temple currency. Now, what does that mean? What's the temple currency? Temple currency is like when you go to the arcade and you get tokens at the arcade. Like, you can't go out and spend the tokens, even though you paid $0.25 for the tokens. I'm dating myself. Now you get a card, whatever. You know what I'm saying. There's this currency that could only be spent in the temple. So you go in and you change your actual gold and silver into temple currency. And then the temple currency you would take and you would buy your lamb, or if you were poor, you would buy your dove, or if you were really poor, you would buy a pancake. But it was going to be your sacrament and your sacrifice that was going to happen on Thursday. Now, huge deal. Huge. Remember, this is the big daddy of all celebrations. This is 4th of July and Thanksgiving and Christmas all smushed together in the ancient Jewish calendar. This is a huge deal. And it is the biggest church bazaar, church supper. It's really a church supper because they're preparing food for you. This is the biggest church supper ever held in creation. There are literally tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people that are descending on there, depending on which historian you listen to. We're talking about the biggest church supper ever. And it is the biggest fundraiser for the temple in the year. And what is Jesus doing? Flipping over the tables. And getting out the bullwhip. And driving out the money changers, the ones who are giving you the token that you can't spend anywhere else for your actual gold and silver. I think one of the great opportunities of this time that we're in right now is that we have an opportunity to stop what is our actual gold and silver. What is the real truth of our being? What is really matters in our life? What is the real affection of our heart that gives us the reason that we rise in the morning? What are those things that we're spending for a token arcade ride? For some pro forma thing that is sucking the life and the energy out of for its own good. You know, there's an old phrase in the army that certain events in the army would become like self-licking ice cream cones. You know, that nobody gets anything out of, but it's just an ice cream cone that licks itself because nobody enjoys it. It just withers on its own. It is that fig tree. And Jesus flips the tables and he stays there and he stands in the middle of the carnage and he starts teaching to the crowd. Now, why does he get away with this? Why isn't he strung up and killed right there? Normally, that would get you killed. You know, I'm amazed at it lasted. He got away with it till Friday. Now, he gets away with it until Friday because of the fact that the temple, because there are so many in the crowd who are transfixed. There's so much energy behind him that the priests are afraid that if they haul him up short and they arrest him now, that the crowds will go after him. After them. So today, Monday, is the day of investing in the things that matter in our lives. And if ever there was a time of us when we face it, we really do face our mortality in one form or another, when our lives have been radically changed, when we can say, what is it that we will spend our gold and silver, our understanding and our love of this world, what is it that we call true, and what will we spend it on? Will we spend it on the token rides of another chance to ascend to the heights, or will we spend it at the foot of the one who made us? Spend it with the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, those places in our lives where true meaning, true purpose, true love, true goodness comes to rest. Now Jesus is going to hang out in the temple for part of the rest of the week. But tonight, after he's done teaching for the day, he heads where? Back to Bethany. And that's where we'll pick up the story tomorrow. So, all right, friends, that is our journey for today. But I have one quote that I want to leave you with, because I believe it is I believe it's what this day is about. That because Jesus goes from being this teacher outside of Jerusalem to planting himself at the center of world events that will turn and change the world for the next 2,000 years, and is still changing them today. And it's this quote from Teddy Roosevelt, and I want to leave you with it today. It is not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, and who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, but there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Friends, Jesus places himself in the arena today. He places himself in the center of the temple, and that he invites us to stand in that place and to come and be and journey in that path and in that way, that we too might stand in the center of the sacred of our lives. All right, that's my hope for you today. And please, I'll check into the chat. Please do, as you move through your day, hold the Costa family and those who love them in your prayers. These are heavy days for them. All right, friends, thank you and blessings, and we will pick up the journey tomorrow.